Chapter 25. An Old Friend. The herbalist shop had a cheery sign and was easy to find. A short, curly-haired woman sat by the door. She was holding a frog in one hand and writing with the other. Eragon assumed that she was Angela, the herbalist. On either side of the store was a house. "Which one do you think it is?" he asked. Brom deliberated and then said, "Let's find out." He approached the woman and asked politely, "Could you tell us which house Jode lives in?" "I could," she continued writing. "Will you tell us?" "Yes." She fell silent, but her pen scribbled faster than ever. The frog on her hand croaked and looked at them with baleful eyes. Brom and Eragon waited uncomfortably, but she said no more. Eragon was about to blurt something out when Angela looked up. "Of course I'll tell you. All you have to do is ask. Your first question was whether or not I could tell you, and the second was if I would tell you, but you never actually put the question to me." "Then let me ask properly," said Brom with a smile. "Which house is Jode's, and why are you holding a frog?" "Now we're getting somewhere," she bantered. "Jode is on the right, and as for the frog, he's actually a toad. I'm trying to prove that toads don't exist, that there are only frogs." "How can toads not exist if you have one on your hand right now?" interrupted Eragon. "Besides, what good will it do, proving that there are only frogs?" The woman shook her head vigorously, dark curls bouncing. No, you don't understand. If I prove toads don't exist, then this is a frog, and never was a toad. Therefore, the toad you see now doesn't exist. And," she raised a small finger, "if I can prove there are only frogs, then toads won't be able to do anything bad, like make teeth fall out, cause warts, and poison or kill people. Also, witches won't be able to use any of their evil spells because, of course, there won't be any toads around." "I see," said Brom delicately. "It sounds interesting, and I would like to hear more, but we have to meet Jode." "Of course," she said, waving her hand and returning to her writing. Once they were out of the herbalist's hearing, Eragon said, "She's crazy." "It's possible," said Brom, "but you never know. She might discover something useful, so don't criticize. Who knows, toads might really be frogs." "Yeah, and my shoes are made of gold," retorted Eragon. They stopped before a door with a wrought iron knocker and a marble doorstep. Brom banged 3 times. No one answered. Eragon felt slightly foolish. "Maybe this is the wrong house. Let's try the other one," he said. Brom ignored him and knocked again, pounding loudly. Again, no one answered. Eragon turned away in exasperation, then heard someone run to the door. A young woman with a pale complexion and light blonde hair cracked it open. Her eyes were puffy. It looked like she had been crying, but her voice was perfectly steady. "Yes? What do you want?" "Does Jode live here?" asked Brom kindly. The woman dipped her head a little. "Yes, he's my husband. Is he expecting you?" She opened the door no further. "No, but we need to talk to him," said Brom. "He is very busy. We've travelled far. It's important that we see him." Her face hardened. "He is busy." Brom bristled, but his voice stayed pleasant. "Since he is unavailable, would you please give him a message?" Her mouth twitched, but she consented. "Tell him that a friend from Gilead is waiting outside." The woman seemed suspicious, but said, "Very well." She closed the door abruptly. Eragon heard her footsteps recede. "That wasn't very polite," he commented. "Keep your opinions to yourself," snapped Brom, "and don't say anything. Let me do the talking." He crossed his arms and tapped his fingers. Eragon clamped his mouth shut and looked away. The door suddenly flew open and a tall man burst out of the house. His expensive clothes were rumpled, his grey hair wispy, and he had a mournful face with short eyebrows. A long scar stretched across his scalp to his temple. At the sight of them, his eyes grew wide and he sagged against the doorframe, speechless. His mouth opened and closed several times, like a gasping fish. He asked softly, in an incredulous voice, "Brom?" Brom put a finger to his lips and reached forward, clasping the man's arm. "It's good to see you, Jode. I'm glad that memory has not failed you, but don't use that name. It would be unfortunate if anyone knew I was here." Jode looked around wildly, shock plain on his face. "I thought you were dead," he whispered. "What happened? Why haven't you contacted me before?" "All things will be explained. Do you have a place where we can talk safely?" Jode hesitated, swinging his gaze between Eragon and Brom, face unreadable. Finally he said, "We can't talk here, but if you wait a moment, I'll take you somewhere we can." "Fine," said Brom. Jode nodded and vanished behind the door. "I hope I can learn something of Brom's past," thought Eragon. There was a rapier at Jode's side when he reappeared. An embroidered jacket hung loosely on his shoulders, matched by a plumed hat. Brom cast a critical eye at the finery, and Jode shrugged self-consciously. He took them through Tiam toward the citadel. Eragon led horses behind the two men. Jode gestured at their destination. Risthart, the lord of Tiam, has decreed that all the business owners must have their headquarters in his castle. Even though most of us conduct our business elsewhere, we still have to rent rooms there. It's nonsense, but we abide by it anyway to keep him calm. We'll be free of the eavesdroppers in there. The walls are thick. They went through the fortress's main gate and into the keep. Jode strode to a side door and pointed at an iron ring. You can tie the horses there. No one will bother them. When Snowfire and Caddock were safely tethered, he opened the door with an iron key and let them inside. Within was a long, empty hallway lit by torches set into the walls. Eragon was surprised by how cold and damp it was. When he touched the wall, his fingers slid over a layer of slime. He shivered. Jode snatched a torch from its bracket and led them down the hall. They stopped before a heavy wooden door. He unlocked it and ushered them into a room dominated by a bearskin rug laden with stuffed chairs. Bookshelves stacked with leather-bound tomes covered the walls. Jode piled wood into the fireplace, then thrust the torch under it. The fire quickly roared. You, old man, have some explaining to do. Brom's face crinkled with a smile. Who are you calling an old man? The last time I saw you there was no grey in your hair. Now it looks like it's in the final stages of decomposition. And you look the same as you did nearly 20 years ago. Time seems to have preserved you as a crotchety old man just to inflict wisdom upon the new generation. Enough of this. Let's get on with the story. That's what you were always good at, said Jode impatiently. Eragon's ears pricked up, and he waited eagerly to hear what Brom would say. Brom relaxed into a chair and pulled out his pipe. He slowly blew a smoke ring that turned green, darted into the fireplace, and then flew up the chimney. Do you remember what we were doing in Gilead? Yes, of course, said Jode. That sort of thing is hard to forget. An understatement, but true nevertheless, Brom said dryly. When we were separated, I couldn't find you. In the midst of the turmoil, I stumbled into a small room. There wasn't anything extraordinary in it, just crates, boxes. But out of curiosity, I rummaged around anyway. Fortune smiled on me that hour, for I found what we had been searching for. An expression of shock ran over Jode's face. Once it was in my hands, I couldn't wait for you. At any second I might have been discovered and all lost. Disguising myself as best I could, I fled the city and ran to the... Brom hesitated and glanced over at Eragon and then said, ran to our friends. They stored it in a vault for safekeeping and made me promise to care for whomever received it. Until the day where my skills would be needed, I had to disappear. No one could know that I was alive, not even you. Though it grieved me to pain you unnecessarily, so I went north and hid in Carver Hall. Eragon clenched his jaw, infuriated that Brom was deliberately keeping him in the dark. Jode frowned and asked, then our friends knew that you were alive all along? Yes, he sighed. I suppose the ruse was unavoidable, though I wish they had told me. Isn't Carver Hall farther north on the other side of the spine? Brom inclined his head. For the first time, Jode inspected Eragon. His grey eyes took in every detail. He raised his eyebrows and said, I assume then that you are fulfilling your duty. Brom shook his head. No, it's not that simple. It was stolen a while ago, at least that's what I presume, for I haven't received word from our friends, and I suspect their messengers were waylaid. So I decided to find out what I could. Eragon happened to be travelling in the same direction. We have stayed together for a time now. Jode looked puzzled. But if they haven't sent any messages, how could you know that it was... Brom overrode him quickly, saying, Eragon's uncle was brutally killed by the Razak. They burned his home and nearly caught him in the process. He deserves revenge, but they have left us without a trail to follow, and we need help finding them. Jode's face cleared. I see. But why have you come here? I don't know where the Razak might be hiding, and anyone who does won't tell you. Standing, Brom reached into his robe and pulled out the Razak's flask. He tossed it to Jode. There's Sether oil in there, the dangerous kind. The Razak were carrying it. They lost it by the trail and we happened to find it. We need to see Tiam's shipping record so we can trace the Empire's purchase of the oil. That should tell us where the Razak's lair is. Lines appeared on Jode's face as he thought. He pointed at the books on the shelves. Do you see those? They're all records from my business. One business. You have gotten yourself into a project that could take months. There is another, greater problem. The records you seek are held in this castle, but only Brand, Risthart's administrator of trade, sees them on a regular basis. Traders such as myself aren't allowed to handle them. They fear that we will falsify the records, thus cheating the Empire out of its precious taxes. I can deal with that when the time comes, said Brom, but we need a few days of rest before we can think about proceeding. Jode smiled. It seems that this is my turn to help you. My house is yours, of course. Do you have another name while you are here? Yes, said Brom. I'm Neil, and the boy is Evan. Eragon, said Jode thoughtfully. You have a unique name. Few have ever been named after the first rider. In my life I've read only about 3 people who were called such. Eragon was startled that Jode knew the origin of his name. Brom looked at Eragon. Could you go check on the horses and make sure they're all right? I don't think I tied Snowfire to the ring tightly enough. They're trying to hide something from me. The moment I leave, they're going to talk about it. Eragon shoved himself out of the chair and left the room, slamming the door shut. Snowfire had not moved. The knot that held him was fine. Scratching the horses' necks, Eragon leaned sullenly against the castle wall. It's not fair, he complained to himself. If only I could hear what they are saying. He jolted upright, electrified. Brom had once taught him some words that would enhance his hearing. Keen ears aren't exactly what I want, but I should be able to make the words work. After all, look what I could do with Brisinga. He concentrated intensely and reached for his power. Once it was within his grasp, he said, Ver stene un atra eka horna, and imbued the words with his will. As the power rushed out of him, he heard a faint whisper in his ears, but nothing more. Disappointed, he sank back, then started as Jode said, and I've been doing that for almost 8 years now. Eragon looked around. No one was there except for a few guards standing against the far wall of the keep. Grinning, he sat on the courtyard and closed his eyes. I never expected you to become a merchant, said Brom, after all the time you spent in books, and finding the passageway in that manner. What made you take up trading instead of remaining a scholar? After Gilead, I didn't have much taste for sitting in musty rooms and reading scrolls. I decided to help Ajihad as best I could, but I'm no warrior. My father was a merchant as well, you may remember that. He helped me get started. However, the bulk of my business is nothing more than a front to get goods into Serta. But I take it things have been going badly, said Brom. Yes, none of the shipments have gotten through lately, and Trondheim is running low on supplies. Somehow the Empire, at least I think it's them, has discovered those of us who have been helping to support Trondheim. But I'm still not convinced that it's the Empire. No one sees any soldiers. I don't understand it. Perhaps Galbatorix hired mercenaries to harass us. I heard that you lost a ship recently. The last one I owned, answered Jode bitterly. Every man on it was loyal and brave. I doubt I'll ever see them again. The only option I have left is to send caravans to Serta or Gilead, which I know won't get there, no matter how many guards I hire. Or charter someone else's ship to carry the goods, but no one will take them now. How many merchants have been helping you? Asked Brom. Oh, a good number up and down the seaboard. All of them have been plagued by the same troubles. I know what you were thinking. I've pondered many a night myself, but I cannot bear the thought of a trader with that much knowledge and power. If there is one, we're all in jeopardy. You should return to Trondheim. And take Eragon there? Interrupted Brom. They tear him apart. It's the worst place he could be right now. Maybe in a few months, or even better, a year. Can you imagine how the dwarves will react? Everyone will be trying to influence him, especially Islanzadi. He and Saphira won't be safe in Trondheim until I at least get them through to Arthur du Orothurum. Dwarves, thought Eragon excitedly. Where is this Trondheim, and why did he tell Jode about Saphira? He shouldn't have done that without asking me. Still, I have a feeling they are in need of your power and wisdom. Wisdom, snorted Brom. I'm just what you said earlier, a crotchety old man. Many would disagree. Let them, I've no need to explain myself. No, Ajihad will have to get along without me. What I'm doing now is much more important, but the prospect of a trader raises troubling questions. I wonder if that's how the Empire knew where to be. His voice trailed off. And I wonder why I haven't been contacted about this, said Jode. Maybe they tried, but if there's a traitor... Brom paused. I have to send word to Ajihad. Do you have a messenger you can trust? I think so, said Jode. It depends on where he would have to go. I don't know, said Brom. I've been isolated so long, my contacts have probably died or forgotten me. Could you send him to whoever receives your shipments? Yes, but it'll be risky. What isn't these days? How soon can he leave? He can go in the morning. I'll send him to Gilead. It will be faster, said Jode. What can he take to convince Ajihad the message comes from you? Here, give your man my ring, and tell him that if he loses it, I'll personally tear his liver out. It was given to me by the Queen. Aren't you cheery? Commented Jode. Brom grunted. After a long silence, he said, We'd better go out and join Eragon. I get worried when he's alone. That boy has an unnatural propensity for being wherever there's trouble. Are you surprised? Not really. Eragon heard chairs and pushed back. He quickly pulled his mind away and opened his eyes. What's going on? He muttered to himself. Jode and the other traders are in trouble for helping people the Empire doesn't favour. Brom found something in Gilead and went to Carver Hall to hide. What could be so important that he would let his own friend think he was dead for nearly 20 years? He mentioned a queen, when there aren't any queens in the known kingdoms, and dwarves, who, as he himself told me, disappeared underground long ago. He wanted answers, but he would not confront Brom now and risk jeopardising their mission. No, he would wait until they left Tiam, and then he would persist until the old man explains his secrets. Eragon's thoughts were still whirling when the door opened. Were the horses all right? Asked Brom. Fine, said Eragon. They untied the horses and left the castle. As they re-entered the main body of Tiam, Brom said, So, Jode, you finally got married. And, he winked slyly, to a lovely young woman. Congratulations. Joe did not seem happy with the compliment. He hunched his shoulders and stared down at the street. Whether congratulations are in order is debatable right now. Helen isn't very happy. Why? What does she want? Asked Brom. The usual, said Jode with a resigned shrug. A good home, happy children, food on the table, and pleasant company. The problem is that she comes from a wealthy family. Her father has invested heavily in my business. If I keep suffering these losses, there won't be enough money for her to live the way she's used to. Jode continued, But please, my troubles are not your troubles. A host should never bother his guests with his own concerns. While you are in my house, I will let nothing more than an overfull stomach disturb you. Thank you, said Brom. We appreciate the hospitality. Our travels have been long without comforts of any kind. Do you happen to know where we can find an inexpensive shop? All this riding has worn out our clothes. Of course, that's my job, said Jode, lightening up. He talked eagerly about prices and stores until his house was in sight. Then he asked, Would you mind if we went somewhere else to eat? It might be awkward if you came in right now. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, said Brom. Jode looked relieved. Thanks, let's leave your horses in my stable. They did as he suggested and followed him to a large tavern. Unlike the Green Chestnut, this one was loud, clean, and full of boisterous people. When the main course arrived, a stuffed suckling pig, Eragon eagerly dug into the meat, but he especially savoured the potatoes, carrots, turnips, and sweet apples that accompanied it. It had been a long time since he had eaten much more than wild game. They lingered over the meal for hours as Brom and Jode swapped stories. Eragon did not mind. He was warm, a lively tune jangled in the background, and there was more than enough food. The spirited tavern babble fell pleasantly on his ears. When they finally exited the tavern, the sun was nearing the horizon. You two go ahead. I have to check on something, Eragon said. He wanted to see Saphira and make sure that she was safely hidden. Brom agreed absently. Be careful, don't take too long. Wait, said Jode. Are you going outside Tiam? Eragon hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. Make sure you're inside the walls before dark. The gates close then, and the guards won't let you back in until morning. I won't be late, promised Eragon. He turned around and loped down the side street towards Tam's outer wall. Once out of the city, he breathed deeply, enjoying the fresh air. Saphira, he called. Where are you? She guided him off the road to the base of a mossy cliff surrounded by maples. He saw her head poke out of the trees on the top and waved. How am I supposed to get up there? If you find a clearing, I'll come down and get you. No, he said, eyeing the cliff. That won't be necessary. I'll just climb up. It's too dangerous, and you worry too much. Let me have some fun. Eragon pulled off his gloves and started climbing. He relished the physical challenge, and there were plenty of handholds, so the ascent was easy. He was soon high above the trees. Halfway up, he stopped on a ledge to catch his breath. Once his strength returned, he stretched up for the next handhold, but his arm was not long enough. Stymied, he searched for another crevice or ridge to grasp. There was none. He tried backing down, but his legs could not reach his last foothold. Saphira watched with unblinking eyes. He gave up and said, I could use some help. This is your own fault. Yes, I know. Are you going to get me down or not? If I weren't around, you would be in a very bad situation. Eragon rolled his eyes. You don't have to tell me. You're right. After all, how can a mere dragon expect to tell a man like yourself what to do? In fact, everyone should stand in awe of your brilliance of finding the only dead end. Why, if you had started a few feet in either direction, the path to the top would have been clear. She cocked her head at him, eyes bright. All right, I made a mistake. Now can you please get me out of here? He pleaded. She pulled her head back from the edge of the cliff. After a moment he called, Saphira? Above him were only swaying trees. Saphira, come back! He roared. With a loud crash, Saphira barreled off the top of the cliff. Flipping around in midair, she floated down to Eragon like a huge bat and grabbed his shirt with her claws, scratching his back. He let go of the rocks as she yanked him up in the air. After a brief flight, she set him down gently on top of the cliff and tugged her claws out of his shirt. "Foolishness," said Saphira gently. Eragon looked away, studying the landscape. The cliff provided a wonderful view of their surroundings, especially the foaming sea, as well as protection against unwelcome eyes. Only birds would see Saphira here. It was an ideal location. "Is Brom's friend trustworthy?" she asked. "I don't know," Eragon proceeded to recount the day's events. "There are forces circling us that we aren't aware of. Sometimes I wonder if we can ever understand the true motives of the people around us. They all seem to have secrets. It is the way of the world. Ignore all the schemes and trust in the nature of each person. Brom is good. He means us no harm. We don't have to fear his plans." "I hope so," he said, looking down at his hands. "This finding of the Razak through writing is a strange way of tracking," she remarked. "Would there be a way to use magic to see the records without being inside the room?" "I'm not sure. You would have to combine the word for seeing with distance, or maybe light and distance. Either way, it seems rather difficult. I'll ask Brom." "That would be wise." They lapsed into tranquil silence. "You know, we may have to stay here a while." Saphira's answer held a hard edge. "And as always, I will be left to wait outside." "That is not how I want it. Soon enough we will travel together again. May that day come quickly." Eragon smiled and hugged her. He noticed then how rapidly the light was fading. "I have to go now before I'm locked out of Tiam. Hunt tomorrow, and I will see you in the evening." She spread her wings. "Come, I will take you down." He got onto her scaly back and held on tightly as she launched off the cliff, glided over the trees, and then landed on a knoll. Eragon thanked her and ran back to Tiam. He came into sight of the portcullis just as it was beginning to lower. Calling for them to wait, he put on a burst of speed and slipped inside seconds before the gateway slammed closed. "You cut that a little close," observed one of the guards. "Won't happen again," assured Eragon, bending over to catch his breath. He wound his way through the darkened city to Jode's house. A lantern hung outside like a beacon. A plump butler answered his knock and ushered him inside without a word. Tapestries covered the stone walls, elaborate rugs dotted the polished wood floor, which glowed with light from the 3 golden candelabra hanging from the ceiling. Smoke drifted through the air and collected above. "This way, sir. Your friend is in the study." They passed scores of doorways until the butler opened one to reveal a study. Books covered the room's walls, but unlike those in Jode's office, these came in every shape and size. A fireplace filled with blazing logs warmed the room. Brom and Jode sat before an oval writing desk, talking amiably. Brom raised his pipe and said in a jovial voice, "Ah, here you are. We were getting worried about you. How was your walk?" "I wonder what would put him in such a good mood. Why doesn't he just come out and ask how Saphira is?" "Pleasant, but the guards almost locked me outside the city. And Tam is big. I had trouble finding this house." Jode chuckled. "When you have seen Drasleona, Gilead, or even Kuasta, you won't be so easily impressed by this small ocean city. I like it here, though. When it's not raining, Tam is really quite beautiful." Eragon turned to Brom. "Do you have any idea how long we'll be here?" Brom spread his palms upward. "That's hard to tell. It depends on whether we can get to the records and how long it will take us to find what we need. We'll all have to help. It'll be a huge job. I'll talk with Bran tomorrow and see if he'll let us examine the records." "I don't think I'll be able to help," Eragon said, shifting uneasily. "Why not?" asked Brom. "There'll be plenty of work for you." Eragon lowered his head. "I can't read." Brom straightened with disbelief. "You mean Garrow never taught you?" "He knew how to read?" asked Eragon, puzzled. Jode watched them with interest. "Of course he did," snorted Brom. "The proud fool, what was he thinking? I should have realised that he wouldn't have taught you. He probably considered it an unnecessary luxury." Brom scowled and pulled at his beard angrily. "This sets my plans back, but not irreparably. I'll just have to teach you how to read. It won't take long if you put your mind to it." Eragon winced. Brom's lessons were usually intense and brutally direct. "How much more can I learn at one time?" "I suppose it's necessary," he said ruefully. "You'll enjoy it. There's much you can learn from books and scrolls," said Jode. He gestured at the walls. "These books are my friends, my companions. They'll make me laugh, cry, and find meaning in life." "Oh, it sounds intriguing," admitted Eragon. "Always the scholar, aren't you?" asked Brom. Jode shrugged. "Not anymore. I'm afraid I've degenerated into a bibliophile." "A what?" asked Eragon. "One who loves books," explained Jode. and resumed conversing with Brom. Bored, Eragon scanned the shelves. An elegant book set with gold studs caught his attention. He pulled it off the shelf and stared at it curiously. It was bound in black leather and carved with mysterious runes. Eragon ran his fingers over the cover and savoured its cool smoothness. The letters inside were printed with a reddish glossy ink. He let the pages slip past his fingers. A column of script set off from the regular lettering caught his eye. The words were long and flowing, full of graceful lines and sharp points. Eragon took the book to Brom. "What is this?" he asked, pointing at the strange writing. Brom looked at the page closely and raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Jode, you've expanded your collection. Where did you get this? I haven't seen this one in ages." Jode strained his neck to see the book. "Ah yes, the Domia Aber Weirda. A man came through here a few years ago and tried to sell it to a trader down by the wharves. Fortunately, I happened to be there and was able to save the book, along with his neck. He didn't have a clue what it was. It's odd, Eragon, that you should pick up on this book. The Dominance of Fate," said Brom. "Of all the items in this house, it's probably the worth the most. It details the complete history of Alagacia, starting long before the elves landed here and ending a few decades ago. The book is very rare, and it is the best of its kind. When it was written, the Empire decried it as blasphemy and burned the author, Hesland the monk. I didn't think any copy still existed. The lettering you asked about is from the ancient language." "What does it say?" asked Eragon. It took Brom a moment to read the writing. It's part of an elven poem that tells of the years they fought the dragons. This excerpt describes one of their kings, Soranthor, as he rides into battle. The elves love this poem and tell it regularly, though you'd need 3 days to do it properly, so that they won't repeat the mistakes of the past. At times they sing it so beautifully it seems the very rocks will cry. Eragon returned to his chair, holding the book gently. It's amazing that a man who is dead can talk to people through these pages. As long as this book survives, his ideas live. I wonder if it contains any information about the Razak. He browsed through the book while Brom and Jode spoke. Hours passed and Eragon began to drowse. Out of pity for his exhaustion, Jode bid them a good night. "The butler will show you to your rooms." On the way upstairs, the servant said, "If you need assistance, use the bell pull next to the bed." He stopped before a cluster of 3 doors, bowed, and then backed away. As Brom entered the room on the right, Eragon asked, "Can I talk to you?" "You just did, but come in anyway." Eragon closed the door behind himself. "Saphira and I had an idea. Is there..." Brom stopped him with a raised hand and pulled the curtains shut over the window. "When you talk of such things, you would do well to make sure that no unwelcome ears are present." "Sorry," said Eragon, berating himself for the slip. "Anyway, is it possible to conjure up an image of something that you can't see?" Brom sat on the edge of his seat. "What you are talking about is called scrying. It is quite possible and extremely helpful in some situations, but it has a major drawback. You can only observe people, places, and things that you've already seen. If you were to scry the Razak, you'd see them all right, but not their surroundings. There are other problems as well. Let's say that you wanted to view a page in a book, one that you had already seen. You could only see the page if the book were open to it. If the book were closed when you tried this, the page would appear completely black. Why can't you view objects that you haven't seen?" asked Eragon. Even with those limitations, he realised scrying could be very useful. "I wonder if I could view something leagues away and use magic to affect what was happening there." "Because," Brom said patiently, "to scry, you have to know what you're looking at and where to direct your power. Even if a stranger was described to you, it would still be nigh impossible to view him. Not to mention the ground and whatever else might be around him. You have to know what you're going to scry before you can scry it." "Does that answer your question?" Eragon thought for a moment. "But how is it done? Do you conjure up the image in thin air?" "Not usually," said Brom, shaking his white head. "That takes more energy than projecting it onto a reflective surface like a pool of water or a mirror. Some writers used to travel everywhere they could, trying to see as much as possible. Then, when war or some other calamity occurred, they would be able to view events throughout Alagacia." "May I try it?" asked Eragon. Brom looked at him carefully. "No, not now. You're tired, and scrying takes a lot of strength. I will tell you the words, but you must promise not to attempt it tonight, and I'd rather you wait until we leave Tiam. I'd have more to teach you." Eragon smiled. "I promise." "Very well." Brom bent over and very quietly whispered, "Droma Copa," into Eragon's ear. Eragon took a moment to memorize the words. "Maybe after we've left Tiam I can scry Roran. I would like to know how he's doing. I'm afraid that the Razak might go after him. I don't mean to frighten you, but that's a distinct possibility, said Brom. Although Roran was gone most of the time the Razak were in Carver Hall, I'm sure that they asked questions about him. Who knows, they may even have met him while they were there in Therinsford. Either way, I doubt that curiosity is sated. You're on the loose after all, and the king is probably threatening them with terrible punishment if you aren't found. If they get frustrated enough, they'll go back and interrogate Roran. It's only a matter of time. If that's true, then the only way to keep Roran safe is to let the Razak know where I am, so that they'll come after me instead of him. No, that won't work either. You're not thinking, admonished Brom. If you can't understand your enemies, how can you expect to anticipate them? Even if you exposed your location, the Razak would still chase Roran. Do you know why? Eragon straightened and tried to consider every possibility. Well, if I stay in hiding long enough, they might get frustrated and capture Roran to force me to reveal myself. If that didn't work, they'd kill him just to hurt me. Also, if I become a public enemy of the Empire, they might just use him as bait to catch me. And if I met with Roran and they found out about it, they would torture him to find out where I was. Very good, you figured out that quite nicely, said Brom. But what's the solution? I can't let him be killed. Brom clasped his hands loosely. The solution is quite obvious. Roran is going to have to learn how to defend himself. That may sound hard-hearted, but as you pointed out, you cannot risk meeting with him. You may not remember this, you were half delirious at the time, but when we left Carver Hall, I told you that I had left a warning letter for Roran so he won't be totally unprepared for danger. If he has any sense at all, when the Razak show up in Carver Hall again, he'll take my advice and flee. I don't like this, said Eragon unhappily. But you do forget something. What? He demanded. There is some good in all of this. The king cannot afford to have a rider roaming around that he does not control. Galbatorix is the only known rider alive beside yourself, and he would like another one under his command. Before he tries to kill you or Roran, he will offer you the chance to serve him. Unfortunately, if he ever gets close enough to make that proposition, it'll be far too late for you to refuse and still live. You call that some good? It's all that's protecting Roran. As long as the king doesn't know which side you've chosen, he won't risk alienating you by harming your cousin. Keep that firmly in mind. The Razak killed Garrow, but I think that was an ill-considered decision on their part. From what I know of Galbatorix, he would not have approved it unless he gained something from it. And how will I be able to deny the king's wishes when he is threatening me with death? Asked Eragon sharply. Brum sighed. He went to his nightstand and dipped his fingers in a basin of rose water. Galbatorix wants your willing cooperation. Without that, you're worse than useless to him. So the question becomes, if you are ever faced with this choice, are you willing to die for what you believe in? For that is the only way you will deny him. The question hung in the air. Brom finally said, It's a difficult question and not one you can answer until you're faced with it. Keep in mind that many people have died for their beliefs. It's actually quite common. The real courage is in living and suffering for what you believe.